Welcome to part 2 of 3, and I just wanted to make you guys aware that you should check out the description, as there are links in all 3 videos that have to do with varying things, information, questions, and down there at the bottom. It is a no-no. But in comparison to death, it's more preferable to death than yeah. So I would rather steal than allow someone to die. and like I said, again, there's not just one blanket statement that I could give you to explain that. There's a long line of rationality, reason, and questions and thinking behind that. It's not just, well, it is because somebody said so. There's not just one blanket statement I could give you for that logic. It's complicated. Very complicated. It's just the same as why I was trying to explain to Bobby B. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to show a picture of a tree and a fetus and say, okay, in this example, the tree might actually have more value ethically and morally from my subjective moralist or ethical standpoint, because the tree has actually got autonomy and it's interacting with reality. And it does interpret pain. While it's not conscious, it doesn't possess consciousness, it's not self-aware. That's true, but it is providing oxygen. It's taking carbon dioxide out of the air, turning it into oxygen. This is good. That's a good thing. And it might even provide fruit, which is a source of resource for living organisms that are conscious, self-aware, autonomous, and also can interpret pain. I don't want to have to go through each little prokaryotic thing and compare it to a fetus, to a zygote, and assess value versus value behind a level, a long line of rational and critical thinking. That's a lot of work. That's a hell of a lot of work. That's a textbook. That's a college textbook on morality that you're talking about. I don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. Well, unless you write college textbooks, I suppose. I'm not going to write college textbooks. I don't have the credentials to do that. But I don't have time. Like, show a picture of a beetle and a picture of a fetus, assess different values, explain why. Show a picture of a piece of a eukaryotic single-celled organism like a bacteria compared to a zygote, and assess value between them, and then show like a mouse. I'm going to tell you hands down, a mouse has more value to me than a first trimester fetus. And like I said, I'm being nice by saying first trimester. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I'm using someone else's argument, which is Richard Dawkins. I'm using his argument. Personally, like I said, I would go all the way up to the third trimester. Because as far as I'm concerned, a fetus, all the way up, even through the third trimester until pretty much close to birth, the fetus is not self-aware, not conscious, and not autonomous. The fetus very much acts like a parasite, and the mother is the host. And it absolutely, the fetus does feed off of the nutrients of the female. And this is why females are at a higher risk of tooth decay and osteoarthritis, is because they are childbearers, and when they get pregnant, that child will just zap nutrients out of their body. That is a real fact. The fetus, the zygote, absolutely acts like a parasite. But we have any other, and I get the bias behind that. That is eventually, someday at one point, going to be a human being, and we have some kind of bias towards that. We assess a higher value to this parasite because someday it's going to be a human. I get that. But you have to acknowledge at some point that is a bias. And like I said, there's a lot more that goes into it than just that. Is it ethical to bring an unwanted child into this world? In keeping in mind, it develops a central nervous system at the second trimester, and I'm being generous by saying, oh, it can interpret pain. Okay, that's... I accept. That's me being generous. That's not my personal opinion. My personal opinion, you would believe I was a monster. You would think I am evil, sick, and twisted. I'm just being honest. But I say, okay, I buy that. That's a pretty good argument. I think that's fair. First trimester, no more. Because at the second trimester, it develops a central nervous system and can interpret pain. We don't like to inflict pain. That makes sense. That's rational. That's logical. All right, so... on top of that, though, like I said, self-awareness, consciousness, autonomy, it's negated. It's not there. And I really think it would be more ethical to terminate it before it is self-aware than wait till it is, when it is self-aware and conscious. It possesses consciousness now. And also interprets pain. And is autonomous. When you terminate it at that level, that's murder. Because now it knows it's alive. I know I'm alive. My cat knows she's alive. She doesn't ponder the meaning of death or life or anything. You know, she's not intelligent like human beings. But all these prokaryotic life forms, aside from plants, and bugs probably. Bugs might have like a little monicum of just the ittiest, bittiest, tiniest amount of some sort of self-awareness. Probably like on a scale that is impossible for us to comprehend. But we're talking about something that doesn't even know it exists. But we want to wait until it knows it exists to treat it like shit. I find that selfish. And it's only for the sole reason that this value is assessed to it unnecessarily. Out of selfishness. It's selfish, in my opinion. It's very selfish. It's not on the behalf of the fetus. Because you don't know what the fetus's opinion is. It doesn't have one. You don't know if it's going to grow up to become an ethicist. You don't know if it's going to grow up to become Hitler. You don't know if it's going to grow up to be Gandhi. It's probably just going to grow up to be like the rest of us, miserable in an existential fucking hellhole. And so it's like, well, no, but it's human, but it's life. We have to. It's so fucking murder. It's so fucking murder because I ejaculated in the male ejaculated in the vagina. Now it's, you know, the cells are mitosis and yeah, okay. It's very selfish. What about the end product? When it is when it actually comes out of the vagina and into this world and becomes self-aware, and then it possesses consciousness, and then it has autonomy, meaning it's interacting with the world. And then nobody wants it. You have to think about that. Or at least I do. Because I'm a moral subjectivist. Not a moral objectivist. And you can be an anti-theist and a moral objectivist. You can. Because you told me, Bobby B told me he is not a theist. But Bobby B, a lot of what you do is very, very on the scale of moral objectivity. That it's static, it's immutable. Because one of the things that you kept doing is you kept asserting to me, life begins at conception. And everything I just described, okay, so what? Life begins at conception. This is your opinion and the opinion of many others, and I disagree, and that's fine. I don't hate you. It's just, that's not how I see it. It's not. I see it in a much more complex view than that. And again, what we're calling life, again, this is complicated. It's not just, well, it's life. Like what? It's the same as like a giraffe, a horse, a dog, a cat, a fish, a bug, a sperm cell, a tree, a dandelion. These are all forms of biological organisms that we call life. But we assess different values to them. There is a big difference between squishing a cockroach. Well, people don't like cockroaches. Let's use another bug. How about, what are bugs people like? I guess a butterfly? There's a fundamental difference between squishing a butterfly with your foot and killing a cat. Okay, now my question to that is, why is that? Why do you think that is? Because that's an interesting question. They're both biological life forms. They possess consciousness. They possess some modicum of self-awareness. They have autonomy. And they both have central nervous systems and can interpret pain. But if you kill a cat and upload it onto YouTube, you piss off a lot of people. But if you step on a butterfly and upload it to YouTube, most likely most people are probably going to laugh that you think it's disgusting that you've got butterfly guts on the bottom of your shoe. Why do we put a different value between these two living organisms? And that's what I mean with the quotes, life. What you're calling life is fundamentally, extremely fucking different, like massively different than a baby that's actually out of the womb. Then once the baby's out of the womb, I find that unquestionable. You're like, no, you cannot. There's no abortion debate there. And I don't think anyone's disputing that. And that's why I think it's respectable, it's reasonable to say after the first trimester, no more abortions, unless it's an emergency, which does happen, brain dead babies. There's actually a story I've told before of a woman, a friend of a friend, that she had a baby, its liver didn't grow right, the baby was dead inside her, and they wanted to do a third trimester abortion because the baby was already, they said, look, child's gonna live like 45 minutes to maybe 2 hours, and then it's gonna die. They had the baby because they didn't believe in late-term abortions. And you know what ended up happening? Well, the baby died within 45 minutes, and then after paying all those hospital bills, delivering and birthing this dead child, and going through all the emotional trauma of dealing with having a stillborn dead child, they had to turn around and then do funeral arrangements. So this was very expensive, and it actually would have been more cost effective. Not that that should have bearing on morality or ethics in that regards, but it did cost, it was more expensive. It would have been cheaper if they would have just done the late-term abortion. So the whole life begins at conception. Okay, that's an assertion. Now I'm getting into the philosophy. I don't care what you're arguing. You could be arguing that peanut butter is good. I don't care. Again, saying peanut butter is good. Okay, that's an assertion. That's a conclusion that you're asserting. The problem with that is there's no premise. It's peanut butter is made out of peanuts. Peanuts are good for you. Therefore, peanut butter is good. That is a proper argument. That's what I'm talking about. You just come to me and say, life begins at conception. Okay, where's the premise? Where is the A is B, but B is not C, therefore life begins at conception? That's what I'm talking about. In this, that's been showing now for a while, and I'm going to move it. So that's why I put it into variables, like x equals P O plus C, x negated P O plus C equals nil. Therefore, x equals PO plus C and cannot be y. And if you look at how I mapped those variables out, it still pertains to x being the variable that represents life, and equals represents begins at, and 2 weeks is represented by the variable y. I'm not telling you that your opinion that life begins at conception is wrong or a fallacy. I'm saying this is not a debate. This is you just interjecting your perspective onto me. And I'm not used to that. I'm used to people that know what debate is. And it struck me like, oh, this probably is very, very colloquial, and probably what the average normal person does. And I'm like, maybe I'm being too hard. Maybe I'm thinking in terms of philosophy and critical thinking too much, and expecting you to do that. I don't know. But the moral questions that I asked were for a reason, and the reasoning that you gave me that no, you wouldn't steal, you would have to let this person die, but then you come up with all these other like scenarios of like what ifs. That's not really part of the exercise. Like if you actually took a moral compass IQ test, there's not like give details. No, it's pretty much standardized. And the reason why is because they're trying to gauge how you come to your moral or ethical conclusions. And for somebody that sees morality as a spectrum, like as a moral subjectivist, that this is a much more complicated question than you really think. It's not, well, the law says stealing is wrong. That's bad, you guys. I'm sorry, it's just going to have to die. But see, somebody who analyzes goes, well, wait a minute. Like, murder has a higher anti-moral or anti-ethical branding to it. It's worse. It has a categorical worse to it than theft. And that's the sign of